This is Olin Marmon's AP Bio Ecosystem assignment, where I traveled out into Granite Creek Park and spent an hour in my hammock with my bike, looking around, observing some plants and animals, and having a good time in the environment. For this assignment, I traveled to the northern corner of Granite Creek Park, where the creek passes through a very well-hydrated area of cottonwood trees. In these cottonwood trees, I set up my hammock and spent an hour just kind of looking around and understanding the environment around me. This was very good because this area had an enormous amount of vegetation and an enormous amount of biological activity, so at no point was I ever bored or had nothing to look at. There's always something new happening. This could mainly be attributed to the biological community of the area. At the heart of this all, we had the autotrophic producers. These were mostly defined by the cottonwood trees of the area, but also the extremely dense bushes covering the ground. At no point in this ecosystem, other than the stream bed itself, was there really any exposed ground. Following this, we had our primary consumers, or the organisms that consume the producers, the plants. Most of these in the ecosystem were pretty easy to observe. We had the common bumblebee, who took pollen from the flowers, the desert cottontails, or the bunnies, that lived off the various grasses in the area, and even a few shrew, which also lived off the grasses in the area. Above these, we have our secondary level consumers, or the organisms that consume the primary consumers. Though these were hard to find within the ecosystem, there was evidence of red fox. The evidence was found within the creek's sand and could be seen in scat and tracks. Now normally, above this layer, there are higher level consumers that consume the secondary level consumers. However, due to the ecosystem size and my placement within it, I couldn't really observe any of these organisms. I would, however, conjecture that hawk would be present within the ecosystem. These hawk would consume the fox and other small animals about that size. It is important now to recognize that all of these organisms rely on each other for survival within the ecosystem. For example, consumers eat producers, secondary consumers eat primary consumers. These organisms die, decompose, and ultimately feed the producers once again. The cycle continues over and over again and is the basis for your basic ecosystem. An easy example to observe of this is the spiderweb relationship with other bugs. Spiderwebs are predators, meaning that they eat these other bugs for their own survival. Spiders produce webs which capture these bugs and then consume them. These bugs that they consume are the prey, and are most commonly gnats, especially within this ecosystem. This is your basic predator-prey relationship. On a much more positive note, we have the symbiotic relationship. This is a relationship where both organisms experience some sort of benefit. The most common of these, and easy to see within the ecosystem I observed, was the bumblebee's relationship with a pollinating plant. The bumblebee takes this pollen and uses it to create honey, a source of energy, while also using this pollen to spread it, benefiting the flower. Both organisms benefit, and both better their chances for survival. On the suggestion of the packet, I also chose to observe an organism for 10 minutes. Nothing else, only that organism. For this, I chose to observe the water strider. During this 10 minutes, I learned many interesting things about this organism, one of which was how it eats. The strider will often find a dead or dying organism within the stream's water, such as a bumblebee, and will slowly eat it as it dies. Though this is gruesome, it is simply the necessary means of survival for this organism. During this time, I also learned how the strider reacted to my own movements. As I moved around the stream, I cast different shadows and light patterns against the water. The strider picked up on this and moved accordingly, protecting its young, in the form of larvae, away from me, a proposed threat. This ecological evolution has shown that the larvae used to be eaten by threats, and the striders picked up on this through evolution and now protects them through movement. In addition to all the natural things I observed, I also noticed some human things that were within the ecosystem. The most prevalent of these was trash. The biggest human impact on this ecosystem was the amount of waste we had put inside of it. This was most prevalent through the amount of plastic bags littering the insides of the creek as well as the banks. These bags not only introduced chemicals, but also interfered with the habitat of animals, ultimately leading to their deaths and possible extinctions. Although I know this is extreme, it's worth noting that we have such a great impact on these ecosystems, no matter how big or small. Overall, I felt as though this project was very beneficial. I learned a lot about the local ecosystems and how the organisms within these ecosystems interacted with each other. It was very interesting, and I feel as though I learned a lot. Thank you very much for watching. All music done by me.